know most of you. I work in law career services, and I focus on students in their last year of school and the recent graduates. And so welcome, and I think this should be really interesting. I'm going to do some brief introductions, and then I'm actually going to give you an overview from some very recent data that we just got from the National Association of Legal Professionals on the state of the legal job market nationally. And we can use that overview and then have the speakers talk more specifically about the Bay Area. So on my left, first is Errol Dauis, and he is this is quite a job title, the Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps Legal Fellow at OneJustice. Thank you. I practice. OneJustice's mission is to increase access to legal help for underserved Californians by building infrastructure and partnerships in the legal community. In this regard, OneJustice works not only with law students and having them help the underserved, but a variety of law firms and nonprofits. So Errol's going to have a good overview of that sector. Errol graduated from UC Davis in the spring of 2011, so he's been out there really recently looking for legal employment. Jennifer Peneyra is the recruiting and diversity manager at Farella Braun Martel LLP, where she has worked for 12 years as a successful recruitment professional, hiring students, lateral attorneys, and contract attorneys for a 135-attorney firm located here in San Francisco. Jennifer also does a variety of work at her firm and in the Bay Area legal community at large to promote the advancement of women and minorities in the profession. Then we have Char Sachson, who is the Deputy Attorney General at the California AGs Office, where she has worked for 11 years. She serves in the licensing section, which represents over 30 licensing agencies. Her practice focuses on administrative disciplinary hearings, and prior to joining the AG's office, Ms. Saxon was in private practice for 8 years. She is a GGU alumna. And then we've got Heidi Timken, who is coming over from the East Bay. I think Walnut Creek is where her office is, so she probably got stuck either in Barber or in traffic. She's a named partner at Timken Johnson Hwang LLP, which is a 6-attorney firm. Heidi has litigated numerous cases throughout the state of California, many involving eminent domain law for property owners, and she also has represented public agency in condemnation and other real estate-related matters, and has tried cases to defense verdicts for clients, most notably in the area of civil RICO and fraud. Hopefully none of you will be. Anyway, she's also a Golden Gate University alumna and graduated in '91. So actually, we have a little time before, so it's not a big problem that she's not here. I'm going to give you this overview that I was mentioning. So bear with me, I'm going to read this. I had to actually review a stack of documents about this big, and if anyone would like a copy of that, I'm happy to give it to them so you can review it and look at it more specifically, but I kind of just took all of that and synthesized it and tried to figure out what would be most pertinent to what you guys would want to hear about. So again, this is the national data. It's collected by National Association of Legal Professionals and the ABA. Once you graduate and you've been out about 9 months, we are going to be coming back to you and asking you about your legal employment. So this is based on that. And because of that, there's a lag time. So this data is actually for those law students who graduated in 2010. And then the data was received in mid to late March of 2011, and then synthesized, and we just got it now a year later. So keep that in mind, but you still see some sort of interesting information. So in general, the legal employment market has obviously not recovered to what it was before the recession, but there are a number of signs that the market is slowly improving in the global economy. In general, law firm recruiting is inching up. Some market practice areas have rebounded faster and stronger. In particular, patent litigation, energy law, healthcare law, and banking. And what they mean by banking, I had to actually talk to them to find out specifically. is litigation in the mortgage banking area, which would make sense. And so probably a lot of litigation against big banks for some of the mortgage practices that went on, and then the new government regulations in this area. A word of caution when I say that things are inching up in terms of law firm recruiting. Because of the European debt crisis, credit markets are shrinking again, and so transactional work is slowing down. And whenever that happens, especially the large firms, tend to contract in terms of their hiring. So 2010 saw, now don't freak out about this, but just, because I'll put some conditions around it. 2010 saw an unprecedented 5% drop in private practice jobs, but this primarily came from large firms. And so those are the firms 500 attorneys and up. General employment in judicial clerkships is down, but that's primarily because of the state budgetary problems that have been going on. There is an increase in employment for graduates in non-law firm sectors, and that's business, government, primarily federal government, public interest, and academia. And I'll explain a little bit more what I mean by business in a minute. So for 2010, the total overall employment number was 85+%. But there's quite a bit of underemployment. And so what I mean by underemployment is that 27% was temporary versus permanent. But a lot of these are good legal positions where the firms are trying to sort of try people out, see how well they work out, rather than permanently hiring them and putting them in a probationary period, they'll do temporary. So there's kind of a mix, when you say 27%, there's a mix of what temporary means. There's 11% were part-time. 8% was a combination of the two, temporary and part-time. And this number, 23% took a position, whatever it might be, in a law firm, in a nonprofit, in the government, or whatever, or Starbucks, or whatever. But it's they're still looking. So the 23% could be combined with permanent, full-time, and that kind of thing, but it's not really what the graduate wanted to be doing, so they're still looking, is one of the questions that they asked. Now this is an interesting number. 5.7% have set up their own practice, and as many of you know, I did a big workshop a couple months ago for the graduates on setting up their own practice. That number has doubled. So between 2009 and 2010, that number has doubled. So, as I was mentioning, many of these, quote, underemployed positions are in business, clerkships, public interest, and academia. By business, I just wanted to explain that could be, there are recent grads who are getting jobs that may be in-house attorney. It could be on a consulting basis where they're not officially working as an attorney, but they're making 6 figures, and it could be working at Starbucks. So it's kind of a big mash of a lot of different kind of positions that people have. And the clerkships, are down a little bit. The federal's okay. So, and more people are going into public interest, which is interesting, and in academia. So more grads are looking to do positions, research assistant, fellowships, things like that. Okay, and then let me just talk about law firms for a little bit. Mid-sized firms, and how now characterizes that as 250 to 500 attorney firms, have made more offers than the 500 plus firms. Okay, so that sort of range, 250 to 500, seems to be hiring more than the big mega firms. The number of offers made by the smallest firms has remained more or less constant throughout the recession and its aftermath. So that's really interesting. So small firms, which 59% of all graduates are going to work for, have stayed pretty steady in terms of their hiring. Jobs in very small firms, so that's 2 to 10 attorneys, which is the most common destination for graduates. Okay, so that would include that 59%. And so 36% are in the 51 to 500. Okay. Salaries are down, but that's probably not a surprise to most of you. So in firms sizes 50 or less, the pay is around 75,000 or less. In firms that are 100 plus or more, it's usually more than 100,000. Okay, so now I'm gonna, so I don't know what to do. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and start asking questions. So the first thing I wanted to do, which is probably, I think, would be really important for all of our panelists to let us know, is how they actually found their positions and what the economy was like when they looked for their jobs. So I'm going to start with Errol, who's the most recent.
All right. Well, a long time ago, I graduated law school, and when I did that, I was still looking. I had, done similar to what some of you else in the audience might be doing, is coming to events like this, doing your networking, all that. I was putting stuff out, but once I graduated, I still had applications out, and I was still looking. The bar came, still looking. I dedicated a little bit of time during bar study. I might be unique in that, but I spent a little bit of time each week during that bar study to look for stuff. This particular position with the fellowship that I found it, I would say, in late June, early July, posted on Idealist, and for you public interest or government folks, I would highly recommend sites like Idealist and PS LawNet. I set up, you can get their job listing sites where you can set up parameters, location, position type, things like that, and you get like daily or weekly emails depending on how you set those parameters. So that's kind of how I do my search. I get an email every morning and look at the stuff that interested me and apply during a bar study. So the fellowship with OneJustice, I saw like late June, early July. I applied for it, again during the bar. I knew about OneJustice as a law student because it used to be called Public Interest Clearinghouse, and I did Public Interest Public Sector Day, which was at Hastings, which actually Yvonne, she's a colleague of mine, also works at OneJustice, organizes, and a GGU grad as well. But that's how I initially heard of it. So when I saw the posting, I knew that it would be a position that I was very much interested in, also a location that I'd be very much interested in. I wanted to be in the Bay Area. And yeah, so as much as I did a lot of like networking to have people kind of lead me towards things, I had to actually do my own research as well, and so that's how I found the position at OneJustice. The way the fellowship works out, and I guess I could talk a little bit more about fellowship at a later time, or if you're interested when we have time, I can kind of break down those types of routes. But I'm in a AmeriCorps legal, right? Equal Justice Works AmeriCorps legal fellow, which is a unique fellowship in that I didn't have to create a proposal to pitch to a host site and a funding stream. That was already done internally, so I just saw the position as a job listing, and I applied, and it just, the job hiring process worked out similar to any other hiring process in that, like I submitted my application materials, did a first interview with 2 of the staff attorneys at OneJustice, then did a second interview with the executive director. So that's how I found that job. But yeah, I just want to underscore, Idealist and PS Law and networking were very helpful in finding leads on public interest and government positions during my job search time last year.
I did not go to law school, and I am not a practicing attorney, so can I just put this question to Char?
Yeah.
I graduated from Golden Gate in '92, and I was working in private practice up until 2000, and fairly happy, but wishing I could make a little bit more money. It was a struggle. But I did a lot of plaintiffs work in now, car accidents, insurance bad faith, just a mixed bag. And I did jury trials and arbitrations and mediations, and really got a ton of experience, which was fantastic. And I wound up at a baby shower of a colleague who was also a Golden Gate grad, and so it was nothing but women lawyers at this baby shower. And so we were all talking, and I said to one woman, what do you work, where do you work, what do you do? And she said, I work for the Attorney General's office, and I represent the medical board. And it's basically like doing med mal, but there's no jury, there's no microcap on damages. We don't even have to prove causation. All we have to prove is that there was a breach of the standard of care. Done. And I said, who do I talk to about this? So she said, you talk to whatever. She basically just pointed me in the right direction. And so I now work in the licensing section, which is just a variation on the folks who represent the medical board. We do medical cases in that we do nurses, dentists, chiropractors, veterinarians, therapists. They do the MDs. But then in addition to all of these healthcare professionals, we do the contractor state license board, we do the accountancy board, we do the office of real estate appraisers. So for all of these licensing agencies, anytime one of their licensees gets into trouble in any myriad, limitless kind of ways, it could be a DUI, it could be a nurse stealing your Demerol in the hospital, it could be a contractor who stole your money and never fixed the money. It could be a therapist who was sexually inappropriate. It could be an accountant issue, that's just boring. But it's just all kinds of people behaving badly in their jobs. And so the licensing board will say, okay, we want their license either revoked outright, or we want a revocation or suspension, or we want some fines, or we just want a citation. But it's all license discipline. Every case is different. And it's good because you do feel like you're wearing the white hat. You're definitely protecting the public. And in some cases, it's just a real bad actor and you're just really happy to see them go. And in other cases, it could be like a nurse who kind of slipped up and she got dependent on Vicodin, but she's better now and she's going to 12-step meetings, and you really want to see that kind of person get back on track. And by putting them on probation, you help them. So you help the public, you might be helping the licensee. And it's a fantastic place to work. Basically, I was telling Jennifer, people come and they don't leave. So I've been there for 12 years and they're never going to get rid of me.
I want to put in a plug for government positions just because you were talking about this. I went to PIPS Day and I spent a lot of time with the public sector employers that were there. And I was amazed at the diversity of the kind of work that the attorneys do for a lot of the different government agencies, both federal and state. So I know, I think PS LawNet has a lot of explanation on what the various ones do. And I was also amazed that, especially with the federal government, I would ask people, do you have an opening? And they would say, yes, but we're not posting it. So I collected their cards, and then they said, have the graduates at Golden Gate, give me a call. So I was able to get emails out to people. So just a little tip about the government, where it does look like, there more graduates are going into government work as opposed to private practice.
And can I just add, the AG's office represents the state in every legal capacity that it requires legal representation. So it's Kamala Harris just secured that settlement against the banks to try to get the money back to the homeowners who got in trouble. It's energy, it's criminal, it's natural resources, it's antitrust. I mean, really, it's representing the prisons. Unfortunately, that's really, really challenging. We have to represent the prison guard who maybe wasn't having his best day. But really, any conceivable way the state needs legal representation, that's us.
And that's some of the substantive areas that look like we're up, so that's a really positive thing. Okay, sounds like Heidi will be here in 5 minutes, so I'm just going to keep moving on to questions, though. Okay, so in terms of your particular sectors, what are you seeing in terms of associate hiring? Is it up? Is it down? Is it about the same? Are you taking people on as contractors, temporary, part-time, hiring before bar passage? What's sort of the lay of the land? Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Are you Jen?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Parking.
I should have told you to take part.
I know, there's no parking in the parking lot.
Oh,
So
that's
it's a
true
real
too.
catch-22.
That is true too.
Yeah.
So we just got done with each of the panelists telling us about how they got their job.
Okay.
So we're going to put you on the hot seat, even though you're sitting here.
No problem.
We'll go from there.
Okay, be happy to jump right in. Good afternoon. My name is Heidi Timken, and I'm a 1991 Golden Gate grad. I was part of the mid-year admit program, which I understand no longer exists, but it was a fabulous program, so sorry to hear of its demise. I entered the job market at a time when things were tanking, and particularly, the economy was in the tank. Law firms hadn't quite caught up to that yet when I was doing midsummer interviewing for summer jobs, and was fortunate enough to get one while I was here doing my studies, and I just hung on to it, for dear life, because by the time I got out in late '91, early '92, there was, the hiring had just frozen. At that time, I think I was one of 3 people who had a full-time job. So I tell you that story because what you're facing now, which I no doubt know seems so bleak to you, is something that is cyclical, like, everything is. I mean, it always seems the worst, and yes, we certainly face problems today, like none before, I think, but we are destined to cycle out of this. So keep your chins up. What I did with my lucky get was I started my career at Miller Star Regalia, and I stayed there for 14 years. It was a fantastic place to start, to learn, to grow, to prosper. Became a partner 7 years, in my 7th year, the first year that I was eligible, and got great experience, became a fairly experienced trial attorney in real estate law. And in my 14th year, I just decided that I wanted more, and that I wanted different, maybe not more, because it didn't turn out to be quite more, but different. And I opened my own firm. So I did so with 2 other female partners at Miller Star, and we opened our firm, Timken Johnson Hwang. How are you, man? Sorry. I worked with Frank at Miller Star. He's a great guy. We started our firm just about 6 years ago. We'll hit our 6th-year anniversary here in March, and it's been fabulous. We hit the ground running. We've had a very successful firm. We've more than doubled in size. And while one of our founding partners, Elizabeth, recently left us, again, to kind of chart her own next course in life, and that's what life is about. It's about next courses, next paths. And so I also urge all of you to keep that in mind as you're looking, that nothing is forever, and if you don't want it to be. And we continue to do a lot of very high caliber work, a lot of complex trial work, and my office is 1.3 miles from my home, which probably explains my inability to deal with the parking situation, or the inability to know how to commute. So anyway, the law has been good to me, and I think that as we talk about what you ought to be doing as you emerge from law school, just keep in mind that everyone here has a story because they stuck with it. They, didn't panic, didn't give up, because there are a lot of paths out of law school, and there are a lot of paths during your career. So, just bear that in mind and be open to hearing about all sorts of different different experiences, because one of them may just be the experience for you.
Well, with those wise words, the next question is, what do you see in each of your sectors? And is the hiring up or down, about the same as last year? Are you seeing, are you trying to hire people more on a contract basis, temporary, part-time? Are you seeing your colleagues doing as well in the same sector? What's the hiring look like before bar passage? So sort of a general landscape in your sector. And for Errol, I'd be interested to know what you're seeing in particular at the various nonprofits. So I'll start with you.
All right. Well, I mean, it's difficult to say like up or down just because it's changing. Some legal aid organizations are hiring, some aren't, and really that all kind of, some are actually laying people off, but there are definitely people hiring. Obviously, I got a job, and I know other people that are getting jobs in legal aid organizations all throughout California and the nation. So I think what it is though is just it's funding. Funding is how you hire people, or funding is why you cut people. And that's the difficult thing to predict, especially in legal aid organizations where funding comes from all sorts of different streams, whether it be the government, IOTA, state bar, private funding from firms, corporations, things like that. And that's the tricky part. And I think that's going back to what I said earlier about this thing kind of, the position that I have, the fellowship that I have just kind of arose. The funding streams, if they want to hire, legal aid needs help. You know this. I send a newsletter out to you all the time looking for volunteers because they need help, but they don't have the money necessarily to hire somebody on. So that's the thing, and I can't really say with any certainty who's hiring and who's not hiring. It's just they want to hire, but they got to wait on the funding, and that can come, at the spur of the moment. And I think it behooves you to just kind of be at the right place at the right time. For instance, the way they hire, fellowships are traditionally, a good way to break into public interest coming out of law school. They tend to hire recent grads to people within the first. Fellowships are usually for people who are recently graduated to the first couple years out of law school. Staff attorney positions are a little fewer and far in between, and they tend not to hire recent grads, just because that's the fellowships. If you're not familiar with them, they tend to be funding from an outside source. So my funder is AmeriCorps. It's a federally funded program, but my host site is OneJustice. So I work for OneJustice. I get some benefits from them, but the bulk of my salary is paid for by AmeriCorps. Versus a staff attorney who is funded solely from the organization's funding. They tend not to take risks on people who may not have had their bar results in yet, who don't have enough experience. So there's a caveat to hiring, again, on that perspective, whether or not you're doing it through a fellowship, which is a term position. Mine is 1 year term with an option to renew for a second year. Other fellowships tend to be either 1 or 2 years. But in that time, it's good because that's where the organization will get to know you, and chances are they want to keep you on. For some reason, my organization tells me they want to keep me on, so we're talking about ways to do that. When my fellowship funding ceases to exist. And that's the thing. So for staff attorneys, they might hire someone straight out of law school with the qualifier that they know you, they know your skills, and they know that you're worth their very limited resources. And that really, again, comes back to your experience during law school, the time you've spent with these organizations, volunteering. And I talked to the people who had ultimately allowed me to work with OneJustice, and I asked them, why did you pick me? I never really worked with you, but they know that I did PIPS Day. I worked with organizations that they work with. I worked with legal aid my entire law school career, and I did volunteer work even before law school. So I think that's the thing. You're definitely in a position to get somewhere in the public interest world if you've developed those skills and developed those relationships with organizations and areas. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I wanted to be in the Bay Area, so I did a lot of work trying to be here. I did an externship during law school from Davis to San Francisco twice a week. I would commute and take the train. I paid money out of my pocket to do that because I knew I wanted to be in San Francisco. And that translated to a lot of different things. A lot of different doors opened up because I showed that I had a demonstrated interest in public interest work in this area. So I guess going back to the question, what's going on? Yes, they are hiring, but again, you got to be in the right place at the right time. And the way to do that is to spend your time volunteering, doing internships, you know, being part of that community, because they want you there. And if they see that you're committed and that you're doing great work, they'll find a way to keep you there. But you kind of have to be a little patient. Contracting, temporary, part-time, yeah, it's all of the above. They hire full-time. I'm a full-time fellow. I've seen people do temporary. It's usually when someone goes on some sort of leave, like a staff attorney will go on leave, then an organization will hire someone for a 3-month contract. And again, that's another opportunity. It's underemployed.
Yeah.
However, you can parlay that into something. I think the one thing I tell a lot of my friends that are looking is like it's a lot easier to get something when you have something. So even a temporary opportunity, it might not be your dream job, but it might be that stepping stone to that job. And so taking those opportunities, being in a position to get a temporary or a part-time gig. I know that there's bridge fellowships here at GGU, and if you're not familiar with those, please talk to your career services office, because those are great ways, again, to get your foot in the door in public interest, get some experience, and again, when you have something, it's easier to get something else. And you're showing, again, a demonstrated commitment to public interest in a sector, in a region that you want to be in. Hiring before bar passage, yes. I was hired before I knew I passed the bar. A lot of fellows are, but again, it's that whole dichotomy between fellowships and staff attorneys. Staff attorneys, it's tough. They might not take that risk. They're very likely not to. Fellowships and part-time or temporary work, absolutely. That's what those positions, I think, are for, is to kind of introduce you to their organization and have you be introduced to their work. Salaries, I definitely did not go into public interest for the money.
I didn't bring that.
Oh, you did not?
We kind of did questions beforehand before this, so I kind of knew what the questions are going to be.
So
Just have you seen them change though? Have you seen them go up? Well, it's pretty much the same or?
About the same.
About the same, okay.
About the same.
Yeah, we kind of figured your salary is like a 500 plus per. You would hope. It would be nice someday. I wanted to mention about Yvonne too, who's here, who you can ask questions to afterwards. Yvonne graduated in 2009 from Golden Gate and worked at a firm for a while, but she is like the poster woman for volunteer work. And she is now a staff attorney at OneJustice. So I just wanted to bring that up, and yeah, you can ask your questions later too. Okay, thank you.
Well, from the law firm perspective, I have some good news. Hiring is actually up. But I give that with a few caveats that it is still a very, very competitive market. Touching on what Heidi mentioned earlier, the economy and its impact on law firm hiring is very cyclical. So I joined Farella back in 2001, and right when the .com bubble hit first. So I've seen the peaks and the valleys, So a couple of years ago, law firms had to pare back their hiring efforts, and that resulted in smaller summer classes, deferred start dates, rescinded offers, unfortunately, which meant a lot of people were out on the market. There were some layoffs as well. Well, fast forward 2 years to now, things are starting to pick up, and law firms may now be finding themselves in a position where, okay, we only hired 1 or 2 first-year associates to start this fall. We need 5. What are we going to do? So there are some opportunities for the 3Ls who are out there to start looking. Janet mentioned earlier that some positions aren't always posted, and you learn about them through word of mouth, through contacts you've met. So definitely utilize your network, any attorneys you've met through past receptions, interviews, what have you. You're volunteering with organizations, follow up and maintain those contacts, because who knows, they might not have a position for you now, they might not have them for you in 3 months, but in 6 months they might say, hey, are you still looking for a position? Send me a resume, we'll take a look. From the mid-sized firm perspective, I'm at Farella, which is at about 135 attorneys right now. So hiring has actually been steady, which is nice. We took advantage of the downturn in the market because we had so much work. We were able to hire about 10 attorneys each year, which was impressive. Half of them were laterals, half of them were entry levels. So just an example, this past fall, we had 5 first-year associates scheduled to start, around October, after the bar, after they had some downtime, after the bar trips. We found ourselves in August thinking, we need help now, so we had 2 of them start early. And then this past January, we hired a 6th one because we were that busy. this fall, we have 2 first-year associates slated to start, and we are afraid that that's not going to be enough, so we are looking to hire. Now, some firms who do find themselves in this position, and I know from speaking with my counterparts at other firms, you know, they may look more at people who are coming off of clerkships, and not just 3Ls, not just recent grads. So you might have, you know, be facing, again, a very competitive market, but there are other options. Like Heidi mentioned, there's a lot of paths after law school, and I've seen it all. You know, from my work in hiring first-year associates, summer associates, lateral hires, and contract attorneys, there's no one set way to get to a law firm if you want to end up at a law firm. I've hired.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But when you say you hire first-year associates, do you mean like straight out of law school?
Straight out of law school.
So is that even like before they get their bar results?
I think with the person we hired in January, we did hold off to see whether or not they passed the bar. Because, as Errol mentioned, you know, it's sort of a risk. We do want to see that. I know for a lot of firms, their primary source for first-year hiring is through the summer program. So you have to work backwards. You know, for the 2Ls and the 1Ls that are out here, you know, it's never too early to start interviewing, but that's not the only source for getting a job at a law firm.
In terms of the third years that you're hiring right now, are a lot of them mostly contract? Because I've talked to several of the third years that graduated last year, and a lot of them are in contract positions rather than permanent.
It's a good question, and in fact, we have hired a few 3Ls as law clerks. We've hired some recent grads as contract attorneys, but I've found that there are also some contract attorneys who are sort of lifer contracts. They started doing contract work through an agency thinking, okay, this is a temporary thing, and they found that they loved having that flexibility to be able to work 3, 6 months, maybe 2 weeks at a time, take a break, enjoy the downtime, and then go back and pick up work at your convenience. And then we've seen some contract attorneys who have worked with us on a project and then had to leave because they found permanent work. So contract work, it is definitely an option that we've seen a lot of recent grads and not so recent grads take advantage of.
I was going to mention, there's one thing that I was just at the NEL conference, and I noticed with most of the law firms that send representatives to these conferences tend to be larger firms. And one of the things I was noticing, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, was because the size of the summer programs have shrunk, they're not taking as many students in that they're then giving offers to. When the need arises, they're then going out to hire recent graduates, which used to be they were very set on, we have the summer program, and that's what we make the offers to, and that's changed now, so it's a little combination of the two.
Right, and so that one attorney that we hired associate this past January, someone we actually interviewed during this on-campus interview program at another school, we ended up not hiring her for the summer, but her interviewer kept in touch with her, and she kept in touch with her interviewer. She took the initiative, sought that person out as a mentor, and because of that relationship, that attorney, our associate, was later able to get in touch with her and say, hey, we actually have an opening now, would you be interested? So that's a perfect example of how important it is to really keep in touch with the people that you meet.
That kind of answers my question a little bit. So, well, I was going to ask, do you guys reach out, like when these positions are open, do you reach out to applicants that have already, previous applicants, or do you post it somewhere, or is it like referrals? Like, for example, the girl who kept in touch with.
Right, it's all of the above, actually. So particularly for, I think, first-year entry-level positions, we don't usually post it on our website because we're a little worried of getting inundated with a lot of applications. So what we do is we do outreach to the career services offices. So definitely keep in touch with your career services counselors because we'll reach out and say, hey, do you have any else who are still looking for a job? In fact, I did that when we had this opening come up. It's a lot of word of mouth, but we'll also possibly reach out to people who previously applied. I'm doing some lateral hiring right now for a couple of associate positions that are more mid-level, and we had applicants, resumes come in last year that we decided not to follow up with, and now I'm going back to those candidates saying, hey, I know we told you at the time last year that we weren't interested. Are you still interested? Now we'd like to bring you in. Things change very quickly for hiring.
And so, how about at the state?
State
we're sort of a weird animal. We typically, I think over the years, at least my section has hired maybe one person a year. But it's very slow because people don't leave. So, our attrition is just hardly anything. But when we do have a posting because somebody retires or if we get sort of a bump in our workload, we will get just so many resumes, and it's gotten so competitive that really, if you didn't go to Harvard or Yale, and really, we're seeing everybody now. We're seeing the middle of the pack on up, and it's so impressive, the people who are coming in and really hungry for work. So we also, I think you have to have a bar license to even apply. So the only way you can get into the AG's office as a law student is to get an internship. And of course, they're unpaid, but it's a fantastic way to get your foot into the door and just get to know people. We have a summer program where some sections will take on summer students, interns. The licensing section does it some years if we have the capacity and we're not too slammed, because it's actually time consuming, and it's great having summer interns, but you really have to dedicate a lot of time and energy to getting people up to speed on what the work is. But once you've done that, you know people in the office, you've hopefully made a great impression and made yourself useful, and of course have demonstrated that you're willing to take on anything. And we remember those kinds of people. We really, really do. So even if it's a couple years down the line and you see an opening, we email out, if you get on the, I think it's the state personnel website, you will get job postings. And you'll see them come up every so often, and it might be something you're interested in, or it might be something you're not. The correctional law section, which represents the prisons and the prison guards, is a really, really, really demanding section. And they have turnover because it really is hard. And so a lot of people come in and they'll work for a correctional law, and they'll do that for a couple, 3 years, and then they'll transfer to another section. And that's a really, really good way to really put in some serious dues and then make a switch to something that you might really be able to do for the rest of your life. There's people that do correctional law for the rest of their life and they love it, but it's really challenging. So I'd say that's really your best shot at getting in, because when we just get resumes from attorneys, it's so competitive, and unless you really, really stand out, or you know somebody in the office and they can say, oh, I remember Jennifer, she was fantastic, it's so hard to get in.
Now, but do you take post-bar interns? So do you only take students as interns, or sometimes do you take?
I think it's only students, and really just because it's unpaid.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, we start at $53,000 for a baby dag, and we go up to.
So if you work there, you can call them a baby day.
Yeah, the deputy attorney general, that's not a lot, but the benefits are really, really good. You also get you start in with a pension system, which is nice. I think it's for every year you put in. When you retire, you get 2% of your salary. So if you put in 30 years, you get 60% of your salary for the rest of your life, which is nice. So 53 to start. We top out with senior lawyers at about 125, which is not bad. If you come in as a lateral, you'll come in somewhere in the middle of that salary range. So you don't come in as a 5-year getting 53,000, which is nice. So I don't know what other questions were in your question.
Well, you probably don't hire temps. I mean, if you're not doing post-bar internships and things like that, you probably don't hire contractors or temporary or anything like that.
We don't. It's really the opposite. If you get a job with us, you're a civil servant. And so we want to make sure that we love you forever, you love us forever, because civil servants, you're there for a really, really, really long time.
You're like,
It's
you're
a
almost.
commitment.
But you work for the correctional.
Yeah, so when we hire somebody, we really, really, really want to make sure we're making the right choice.
So Heidi?
Okay, well, I feel the same way. Whenever we hire somebody, we want to really, really make sure we're making the right choice. Not because they're going to be lifers. We do let people out the door. But I have a different situation. It's funny to hear Jennifer talk about the mid-sized firm, because it goes to show how your perspective can change so quickly. Because when I worked at Miller Starr, we were 50 to 55 attorney firm, and we thought of ourselves as a mid-sized firm. And in Contra Costa, where we were located, Miller Star moved from Oakland in the last decade, or in the 90s. We were like one of the largest firms in the county. So my perspective kind of got skewed. I still thought of Miller Star as a mid-sized firm, but to hear of Farella as a mid-sized firm, I always think of Farella as a large firm.
I think
So-
mid-size goes from like 50 to 200 or 200.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
very wide
So
range.
it's a big swing. Clearly, I'm nowhere near those numbers anymore. So we have a really, I think, different way of approaching hiring. And because right now we're 6 attorneys, okay? We're 6 attorneys, we have 2 secretaries, we have a law clerk, we have right now a free paralegal that we're using from JFK. And so we sort of took our experience, because we're all homegrown at Miller Star. We took our experience there, like all the stuff that you get when you're in a big law firm. You get staff, and you get services and things, and we transferred that to our small firm. So we've always approached it like when you walk into our office, everything is at your disposal. So people outside wouldn't necessarily know that we're a small firm. That was our goal. And I think we've achieved that pretty well. In terms of hiring, we went about that in a very sheepish way. Because in other words, very timid way, because we really did need to have an environment that we all wanted. I mean, we left to create our own environment. So for us, hiring becomes very, very important. It becomes about the person, period. It isn't really about the work. If there's too much work, we just work harder. If there's not enough work, we try to busy ourselves doing other things. People don't get fired, okay? Because we hire the single individual. Now, one of the things that we do that I didn't necessarily hear coming from these other folks is that we actually advertise for our jobs, for our positions. So what we did was we hired in the downturn. That's one of the things that's kind of different. I don't know if we did it differently, but certainly from the area that I was in Contra Costa, we were the only ones hiring at a time when everyone else was tightening their belts. We've lost law firms. They have just disappeared off the map in Contra Costa. Other of the big firms they're tightening their belts. But we have a statewide practice also. So, I mean, we're kind of this anomaly. I don't even know how to think about us, but clearly we're a small firm. And so what I would encourage all of you to do, because I think that everybody does that. I don't mean to say that we're the only people who hire because we have to connect with the individual. Clearly that's not the case. But I say it because what's important for you folks to know about that is that there really needs to be a presence. You really need to have a presence when you interview. And it doesn't matter whether you're interviewing with my firm or with the AG or with Farella or with public interest. It doesn't matter. The person who comes in and makes that impression and makes that connection is the person who's going to rise to the top. Not necessarily get the job, but rise to the top. So that's important because I don't know what kind of, I always make a plug for trial advocacy when I come to speak at Golden Gate. It doesn't matter what I'm speaking about. At some point, I'll scream trial advocacy because it's really important. It doesn't matter what kind of law you want to do. It doesn't matter where you want to be. You need to work on your presence. It's so vitally important. I can't express it enough. So, we did really well in the downturn. That was kind of a gutsy move on our part. And that's another thing that you need to know about small firms is that you just don't know what you're going to get. But I guarantee you that a lot of you are going to be looking and interviewing with small firms. You know, we hear about the big firms, but it's the myth that the big firms are where all the employment takes place. It doesn't. It takes place down in those 20, 15, 10-person firms or 5-person firms. That's where a lot of the hiring takes place. So what I have to say is, you look on Craigslist. I don't know whether that was the right thing or the wrong thing. I don't know. I don't even go on Craigslist. But we put our job things on Craigslist. And we have hired fantastic people, because once they come in, we do the big firm thing. We cull the resumes. We do all the things that I learned as the hiring partner, and that is my other partner, Leslie, learned as the hiring partner at Miller Star. So we have a way of culling through resumes. And, and that's one of the things coming from Golden Gate, let's just be honest, maybe I won't be invited back. It's harder to get noticed in that culling process. So I'll tell you this, it's about doing the internships, getting whatever experience you can, taking whatever job, and don't be picky. I mean, really, do not be picky about whatever opportunities come your way. Take them and run them up the flagpole on your resume. Another thing is grades. In getting your resumes culled through, and I can tell you that at the bigger firms, I mean, they really want to see, particularly if you're coming from Golden Gate, not the Harvard or even the Bolt or the Stanford or whatever, they want to see you in the top 10%, the top 15%. That's the fact. So whatever you're deficient in, work on it. And if you can't get one thing right, work on the other two things, whether that be getting the jobs you can, working on your presentation skills, with whomever you can do that. It's just so important. So I don't know if hopefully I answered the
Well,
question.
you got into one of my next questions. So I'll go down this way now with Char, but that was one of the things I wanted to find out about as well was, and maybe Heidi, you can address this a little bit too, is that, are there other tips, and you've talked about interviewing, what things to do, have this presence, be really well prepared and that kind of thing. But are there other tips you can give too that you've noticed maybe in interviewing and cover letters and resumes that make people stand out?
Boy, we have, I guess I can only sort of look at the people that came through and that made it to become part of our firm, and very articulate, very personable, really were sort of bold without being obnoxious. Just people you'd sit down and you could kind of get that instant chemistry with. And that had to do with, A, who they are as a person. Just, they got that one out of the box. But B, there was an enthusiasm to talk about, real estate law, like kind of a genuine enthusiasm to talk about, oh, well, I did this case once and here's how I looked at it. Like, I'll never forget when Chris, sat down and was telling me about this case that he did and telling me how he analyzed it and all that. That to me gave me a window, because you're not likely to, run across people who know or think they might have a passion in real estate law. So, really do know something. Everything is at your fingertips today on the web. I didn't do any of this stuff, by the way. But I know that you can do it today because you can look everybody up, you can find out where they were from, you can find out what their interests are if they put that on their resume. Really dig deep into that personal level is I just think that's invaluable from my perspective. And cover letters are okay. I'll be honest with you, we kind of go straight to the resume, but there's a game. I mean, if you write well, lay it out on the table. I mean, if you write well. But really, it's the resume that we want to see that really communicates to us that you've got You've got some credentials, you've done some interesting things, you know, you've shown a pattern of stick-to-itiveness with some aspect of your life. You know, whatever you think is one of your your best qualities, punch them up.
Yeah, and I just have to echo what Heidi said. People do not do their research. It blows me away every single time we interview, and we'll set aside 2 or 3 days to just do interviews back to back. And people will come in and they'll say, "Oh, well, what do you do here?" And we'll be like, "Oh my God, okay."
Right.
And we have to spend another 20 minutes with this jerk, just to. But we're like, okay, do some research, muster some enthusiasm. Just however you like to do it. The last guy we hired, he came from the Superior Court. He was a research attorney, and he was pretty, a couple of years out of law school, pretty green. And he sat down, and we said, "What do you know about our work in licensing?" He said, "I know you represent 30 some odd licensing agencies, from boards to bureaus to directors. I know you're governed by the Administrative Procedure Act, and you do all your work before administrative law judges." And we were like, because he absolutely stood out. And it didn't take him more than half an hour to figure out what he just, presented to us. So please do your research. I mean, you don't want to be stalkery, oh, I didn't even went to, Cuba last week. But,
Yeah, right. Your Facebook page.
But, especially for big firms, they will have some kind of case that there will be some media about. If it's a government agency, we're always in the newspaper. One of our biggest clients, the nursing board, just went away because we lost one of our biggest clients because every few years they have to submit a proposal to the legislature to continue their existence. And we need the nursing board. We have to have nurses that are licensed and are regulated, and it's a really vital function. But in their legislation to continue their existence, they put in some new jobs and positions. And Jerry Brown said, "I told you, no new jobs at the nursing board, I'm vetoing this." And they were like, and what are we going to do? Now we don't exist anymore. And we were like, what do we do? We're your lawyers. So, that made the news. Somebody came in and laid that on us. "Oh, what's going on with the nursing board situation I read about on the internet?" We would be so impressed. So you will stand out if you do that. And also, please make sure that your resume and your cover letter are perfect, no typos. It's got to be polished. If there's a typo, you're gone.
And you suggest short and succinct cover letters.
Yes, yeah. And same thing, as long as the cover letter passes muster, right to the resume. And we all love to see interesting things on there. I hiked in the Himalayas. I was a nursery school teacher, then I went to law school. That's all great stuff to talk about. We had some guy who put ditch digger on his resume, and we're like, we don't like that. Maybe somebody would like that. We're like, no, get out.
He's a hard worker.
I think it's kind of cute.
It can really go either way.
Yeah.
But I thought that it shouldn't be on your resume for this
Lawyer.
term. Yes.
It is very, very competitive, as I mentioned earlier. For our firm, for our summer positions, we usually hire 5 summer associates. We'll get about 700 to 800 resumes for those 5 positions. So it does come to reviewing all those resumes. And the reality is, yes, we're going to look at your grades. We're going to look at transcripts. We're going to use grade point cutoffs. If you don't have the grades, you better have a good story why you don't have those grades. What I've been impressed with I've seen this happen before is, we'll get a fantastic resume, strong credentials, work experience, leadership, those are all things that we look for, and then you look at the transcript and you'll see, all A's and B's and then 1 C minus in one class. And it's like, wait, what went on there? And then I'll see that person actually listed that professor from that class as a reference. That impressed me because I thought, okay, there's more to the story here than just this grade. This doesn't tell me everything about this student's ability. I want to know more. So things like that will make you stand out. Again, if you don't have those stellar grades, you better be active in some organization, whether it's in your school or out in the community. And I don't want to see 25 organizations just because you signed up for them. Take a leadership role. Be on the board of some organization. TA for a class, that's always impressive. If you can teach it, that means you clearly understand the concepts in that class, so that's a good sign. And then once we get through all those resumes, it's tough to stand out on paper. So anytime there's a human connection behind it, it makes that person stand out. It makes that person's resume come up to the top. So if you know someone that works at the law firm, if you met an attorney at a panel where they spoke at your school, bring that up, mention that in your cover letter. Although to be honest, I don't always look at cover letters also. I've found that sometimes cover letters make students stand out, unfortunately, in a bad way, and that if you're doing mail merge, make sure you line up the right recruiter's name with the right law firm name with the right office. And again, do your research. I know all of our law firm websites look the same. We all use the same language, but quick look at the front page. We'll give you the top 5 stories, top 5 recent use. If you're interviewing or meeting with an attorney, their bio is right there on the page. There's no excuse for, we've had this happen where one of our attorneys will go out for an interview on campus and come back telling me, the student asked, what it's like to be an associate. I've been a partner for 5 years. It's on my bio. I feel for students. I know it's so hard to differentiate all the law firms and keep the names and the positions and the practice areas straight, but you have to do your research and make sure that your resume is mistake-free. As Char said, that's your one opportunity to present yourself in the best light. If you're going to present us in something that's less than perfect, that's going to make a question your ability to come up with a good brief or send something out to the client.
Errol, it's okay.
They've said pretty much everything I wanted to say, but I will, for public interest folks, grades, they're not going to make or break you. What they really want to see is 2 things, a skill set and relationships. What I mean by skill set is, your demonstrated interest to that work. What did you do during law school? What did you do before law school that translates to what that you say you're interested in? It's not enough to say, I want to work with children. Have you done that? Have you participated in volunteer work? Have you actually got your hands on some real experience? And that's through pro bono work, internships, externships, and all that. Skill sets also about your work products. Again, with a resume, cover letter. Good cover letters get glossed over. Bad cover letters get remembered. Don't write a bad one. That's errors. I'll leave it at that. And then with relationships, again, who do you know plays a big part. When I interviewed for OneJustice, or when I found out that I was getting an interview, I found out that a person I was going to law school with had worked there as an undergrad. So I sat with him for an hour, took him out to coffee, said, hey, tell me everything about all you did there at that organization. So when I came for the interview, I was more than prepared. And when after I walked out the interview, the person that I had talked to was actually volunteering his time there at OneJustice. And so the people that were making those decisions, they love that person. And so, those relationships are key. So maintain a positive reputation wherever you go, and you never know who you end up seeing. It's as big as this city is, it's a kind of small community, and it takes just one small, one wrong decision to mark you for something. So make sure that you're on your best at all times, and you'll find that when you start applying, you'll find that you're among friends.
It sounds like we've run out of time, but